All right, attention network defenders, SOC analysts, and the global developer community. We are officially in Phase 1, the zero-day disclosure, and this security explainer serves as your immediate Code Ninja advisory. Look, a highly sophisticated wave of supply chain attacks has just put millions of software developers on high alert. Everyday developer tools, literally the exact IDEs you trust to build your applications, have been weaponized. We are tracking a critical vulnerability, CVE-2026-48027, involving the Nux console extension for Visual Studio Code. This is an active breach, guys, and the sole purpose of this disclosure is to get you the immediate mitigation protocols you need to protect your perimeter.
So let's dive right into this, because we're dealing with what might literally be the most terrifying metric in modern cybersecurity. 18. That is the exact 18-minute window on May 19, 2026, where a completely trusted, widely used developer extension was transformed into a credential harvesting Trojan. In the world of automated CI/CD pipelines and default auto-updating dev environments, you know as well as I do that 18 minutes is an absolute eternity. If your IDE was open and connected to the internet during this super brief window, you were exposed to a malicious payload. And get this, without a single click. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the sheer velocity of a modern supply chain compromise. Let's map out exactly how the zero-day, zero-click delivery went down. At exactly 12:30 p.m. UTC on May 19th, a malicious, compromised version of the NX console extension was pushed straight to the authoritative Visual Studio marketplace. Just 3 minutes later, at 12:33 p.m. UTC, it populated right across to the OpenVSX registry. By 12:48 p.m. UTC, the package was finally scrubbed from the Visual Studio marketplace, giving us that roughly 18-minute exposure window. But notice the lag on OpenVSX. The problem was detected slightly later over there, leaving the compromised package live until 1:09 p.m. UTC, which is a 36-minute exposure. Because VS Code extensions just auto-update in the background by default, developers didn't have to manually download a thing. The infrastructure literally delivered the payload for the attackers.
Okay, moving into Phase 2, the comms check. Before we get to the actual mitigation steps, we need to do a quick tactical pivot. In the security research community, establishing a reliable, verified communication link is absolutely paramount before we start disseminating critical mitigation protocols. We need to make sure you're receiving this intelligence securely and that your perimeter defenses are primed for the data I'm about to hand over. Which brings us to a mandatory safety protocol. To make sure you receive real-time, uncompromised threat alerts the very second a zero-day drops, you need to subscribe to @cybertech79 right now and enable all notifications. Frame this not just as a simple follow, but as an absolute security necessity for your threat intelligence feed. Furthermore, I need you to hit the like button as a formal ACK, an acknowledgement of receipt for this intel. We really need to know this advisory is penetrating the noise and reaching the defenders who actually need it. So do that now, and let's move forward.
All right, we've reached Phase 3, the deep dive. The sheer brutality of the CVSS scoring here is what makes this a nightmare scenario. We are looking at a 9.8 out of 10 on the CVSS 3.1 framework and a 9.3 on CVSS 4.0. Both dictate a critical severity. Just look at that vector string for a second. Network attack vector, low attack complexity, none for privileges required, and none for user interaction. Guys, this is the holy grail for a threat actor. A remotely exploitable supply chain attack requiring 0 privileges and 0 user interaction, resulting in a massively high impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability across a developer's entire workstation.
To understand exactly how they bagged that 9.8 score, we have to look at the Common Weakness Enumeration Classification, CVE-506, Embedded Malicious Code. The attackers bypassed the whole need to exploit a flaw in the code itself by simply becoming the trusted code. They managed the unauthorized insertion of an obfuscated payload directly into the legitimate NX console release pipeline. And because the extension runs right in the user context of the IDE, it inherently possesses the exact same unrestricted access to local environment variables and workspace files as the developer does. It's just a seamless, totally silent hijack.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the sheer devastation of the blast radius. Once that embedded malicious code executed, it fetched an obfuscated payload from an external server that was designed to do one thing: aggressively harvest secrets. It scraped IDE credentials stored both in memory and on disk. It grabbed Git credentials, allowing attackers to potentially poison your source code repositories. It exfiltrated cloud provider tokens, meaning your AWS, Azure, or GCP infrastructure was suddenly wide open. It stole SSH keys, API keys, database passwords, and NPM tokens. An attacker with this kind of data set doesn't just compromise the developer. They basically compromise the entire enterprise CI/CD infrastructure.
And that brings us to the current active threat landscape. Look, this isn't some theoretical white paper vulnerability. On May 27, 2026, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added CVE-2026-48027 straight to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. By May 29th, threat intelligence confirmed that the credentials harvested from this specific breach were actively being used in known ransomware campaigns. The threat was so severe that CISA actually invoked Binding Operational Directive 22001, giving federal agencies a hard deadline of June 10th to remediate or completely discontinue use of the product.
We need to isolate the poison right now. If you're going to hunt this on your network, you need the exact telemetry. The compromised package is NX Console version 18.95.0. That right there is the sole malicious version. If your extension logs showed this specific version touched any disk in your environment during that May 19th window, you must assume a total credential compromise.
Let's make this crystal clear for your remediation teams. Contrast the malicious version against the secure version. 1895.0 is the compromised payload. Do not use it. Don't even attempt to sandbox it. The vendor, NRWL, acted quickly and published a clean, secure release. Version 18.10.0 or later is your secure baseline. If you're auditing your developer workstations today, verify your installation integrity immediately to ensure you are operating on 18.10.0 or higher.
Okay, grab your notepads because this brings us to the mandatory patch protocol. Pay super close attention here, because Step 2 is totally meaningless if you skip Step 3. First, you must uninstall the compromised N6 console completely from any affected machine. Second, upgrade to the clean version 18.100.0 or later. Third, and I cannot stress this enough, this is the absolute most critical action. You must rotate all credentials, SSH keys, and tokens that were accessible to the IDE during the exposure window. Updating the software closes the door, yeah? But if they already copied your keys, they don't even need the software anymore. Finally, run comprehensive malware and endpoint scans to check for persistence mechanisms or unexpected outbound connections.
For the white hat community and the SOC analysts on the front lines, here are your exact telemetry parameters for hunting this breach. You need to query your endpoint inventory specifically for the presence of NX Console 18.95.0 in the VS Code extension installation logs around May 19th. Hunt for behavioral anomalies. Look at the VS Code extension host process, code.exe, and see if it spawned any unauthorized child shells or network utilities. Monitor your network telemetry for unexpected outbound traffic to external destinations immediately following the exposure window. And audit your file access logs for any unauthorized reads of sensitive directories like .sh, .aws, or .npm-rc by the IDE.
Finally, Phase 4, the ethics. Why do we broadcast this intelligence? Well, as security researchers, we operate by a code. Coordinated vulnerability disclosure is not about inducing panic. It's about forcing vendor action and arming you, the defenders, with the precise intelligence required to protect the perimeter. Transparency is hands down our greatest weapon against threat actors who operate in the shadows of our software supply chains. Users have an absolute right to know when their systems are compromised so they can lock down their environments.
I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought. We build the infrastructure of the modern world on a foundation of open-source components and third-party extensions. But if an attacker can hijack your entire dev environment, siphon your source code, and steal your keys to the kingdom in under 18 minutes with zero user interaction, how robust is your software supply chain really? It is time to audit your trust models, patch your systems, rotate your keys, and above all else, stay secure.